Good morning, everyone, and welcome into another edition of WST Sunday Live. My name's Connor Hrabchak. In a moment, I'll be joined by Lyss Houde. And are they back? Are the Winnipeg Jets back? We're going to break down last night's 5-1 win over the Washington Capitals. Look, the Caps came into yesterday as the fourth best team in the NHL, and the Jets looked the best they have all season. That was their best game of the season. I don't think there's any argument otherwise. A 5-1 win with, the one for Washington coming very late. Would have been nice to have Connor Hellebuyck get a shutout in his first game back. Nino Niederreiter's 1,000th game. Awesome pregame ceremony with an appearance from Roger Federer in his kind of his messages there from family and friends and former teammates. So an awesome night at Canada Life Center. Fans were singing Hey Baby and Sweet Caroline throughout the third period, just like last year. It was a vintage 2024-25 Winnipeg Jets beatdown last night, and we're going to break it all down and talk about it. Me and Lyss right off the top of the program. We'll get to our Chuds Power Sports Power Poll a little bit later on. And last time the Jets scored 5 goals on a Saturday night, we just did our 5 favorite goals. So we're doing that again. That's our Chuds Power Sports poll today. Trending up, down, burning questions all coming up. But later on in the program, we're welcoming Dimitri Filipovic from the Hockey PDOcast to the show. Super excited to have him join us. We recorded it before the game yesterday, so this will be a nice little contrast of, okay, how were we feeling and how are we feeling now as we caught up with Dimitri before yesterday's game. So super excited to bring him onto the show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. Hope you guys all enjoyed the game last night. I'm sure you did, because the Jets needed that one, and I think the fans really needed that one last night as well. Let's bring her in, Lyss Houde. Lyss, how are you doing on this Sunday morning after that one last night?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk about it because there was a lot that I really liked about that game. And look, I think we can always say right off the cuff, need to see a couple of those in a row
For
before
sure.
anything in my mind
Yes.
starts to change. But, you know, when you're on a Sunday show where you're going to talk about the Saturday game, the players can only play one game. So we're going to talk about that game. And they did as
Right.
well as they could have. I think in that one, there was a lot of really compelling stuff we saw over those 60 minutes that made us feel pretty positive about this group, which isn't necessarily an emotion we've been sharing about them for the last couple of weeks. So I'm excited to talk about that because I think you put it perfectly. The fans deserve this. And so we're gonna talk about it.
Yeah. And as you put it so eloquently in last night's game, I think the biggest thing for me is that they got contributions in this game from the spots they needed it the most, and that starts in net. They needed a good start, whether it was Comrie or DiVincentis or, as we come to know, Connor Hellebuyck. They needed a quality start. They got a quality start. And Connor Hellebuyck, did he blow the doors off? No. I mean, the Jets gave up 3 shots on goal in the first period. That's exactly how you want to ease him back in. But he was still great. There were no second chance opportunities. The rebound control stuck to him. And you could just tell, Lyss, to me at least, I want to start with Hellebuyck today, is the calmness or the calm demeanor he carries, not only in the room and like post-game media and like in years past, he's gotten lit up for 5 goals and he'll stand up there and say, no, I liked my game. I liked my deal. Like he's just got that calm demeanor about him. On the ice, the way he carries himself, where he'll slide over and just make a save and make it look so easy, and the rebound will just stick to him. And it's like, we're good here. We're going to take a face off. You gave up a 2-on-1, but it's okay because I'm going to save it and there's going to be no rebound. Like the calm demeanor in which he plays with, I do think really does help this team play more confident in front of him because they know he's the MVP. That's going to be a big boost. Nino Niederreiter's 1,000th game, that's a big boost for them. I just don't think we expected them to, for everything to click, if you will, right? Last night, where the special teams clicked, the secondary scoring got on the board, the defensive structure looked great, and they got the goaltending, and they got the top line scoring, and that's what resulted in their best game of the season.
Yeah, you want to talk about Hellebuyck first, and we can do exactly that. I think there's a huge psychological element, and the
For
players
sure.
and coaches spoke to us afterwards, talking about how this is a first game where everyone in their starting lineup was healthy all season. We're game 31, and it took 31 games for everyone to be entirely healthy. Like you said, Nino's game, Connor Hellebuyck coming back, all of these different things. I think the group had a different mentality going into this one for sure. But in terms of actually looking at kind of the on-ice impacts of someone like Connor Hellebuyck. We've been talking a lot about how zone exits have been a challenge for the Winnipeg Jets this year, and they have different strategies and ways of wanting to control the play when it gets into their own end that really hinges on Connor Hellebuyck in terms of what types of pucks they encourage other teams to rim around the boards for Connor Hellebuyck to go out and play. That's something that I've read a lot about, and it's very fascinating because everyone thinks that Connor Hellebuyck is so terrible at handling the puck. But the way the Winnipeg Jets kind of push forechecks to the outside, they actually want him to play the puck. But different things like that, like they're able to get back to, like, you build plays and systems and strategies around the guys that you have in the National Hockey League and in every other sport. If you have Kyle Connor as your left wing on your top line, you're going to try and figure out some ways to get pucks for him to shoot from the left. You know, that's not rocket science. You guys know that. And so the same thing applies to a goaltender. So this team is built around him being their goaltender. And you can see there was a lot more poise and confidence in the way they broke out of their zone in this game. And, Scott Arniel in the post game mentioned that Washington tends to kind of clog up the neutral zone a little bit, which makes it difficult. Even if you get that preliminary pass, you get that exit pass right away, there's still challenges that you have to overcome. And I think the Winnipeg Jets did a really great job kind of in all three zones to obviously kind of take over the bulk of the minutes in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you talked about how, or at least coming into the last couple Sunday shows, we've talked about new line combinations, right? Like, it's just something that's happening. They keep changing the lines. The top line was broken up for a little bit there. They moved Velarde down. Now they have Velarde back up on that top line, and they switched the middle six again in this game. And to me, this is the biggest, you talk about like the Jets getting everything in this game. The middle six looking as cohesive as it did, I think, is the biggest standout thing for me. Yeah. And Lyss, I have a bit of a theory, and I know you bring the theories on WST Sunday, but I have a theory.
I'm here for it. I'm sad.
The Winnipeg Jets middle six, I think we can all agree, looked the most cohesive and connected as they've been in weeks, right? Maybe even months with this team. The Winnipeg Jets brought in 4 forwards in the offseason. Tanner Pearson, Cole Koepke, Jonathan Toews, Gustav Nyquist. Last night, the Winnipeg Jets dressed 12 forwards. Here's where those 4 forwards ranked in 5-on-5 time on ice. Jonathan Toews was 10th, Gustav Nyquist was 11th, Cole Koepke was 12th, and Tanner Pearson was in the press box. And the Jets middle six.
I can't believe you haven't told me this yet.
And yes, I stumbled upon this last night, Lyss. And then the middle six, consisting of Niederreiter, Nemeskov, Perfetti, Barron, Lowry, Iafallo, looked as cohesive and connected as we've seen them in weeks. Multiple goals from that Barron, Lowry, Iafallo line where they were going up against Wilson and Protas, and we can get to Scott Arniel's comments in just a moment here. But I don't know, Lyss. I'm over here, with my tinfoil hat thinking like coincidence. I think not, in terms of the fact that they looked so connected, and the 4 new guys played the 4 least minutes, one guy in the press box, as you could have last night.
Yeah, can't play less than 0 minutes.
No.
But that's actually really interesting. And I don't know if I even really clocked that, to be honest with you, yesterday. But there were a couple parts of those line combinations that I liked. And I think that one that really stood out to me, and I think it stood out to you as well, was that moving Barron back to the way, which he's played some wing, over this year. But then, last year, everyone was really big in he's a center camp. And I was too. Like I was kind of leading that charge as well. But he is back on the wing and playing with Adam Lowry, and that combination looked really, really good. I thought Alex Iafallo has looked better the last couple of games. So I think that maybe, and again, we talked about this in terms of, the whole concept of breaking up the first line, the pros and cons. One of the pros that I was kind of heavy on is that as a short-term solution, you do it for a half dozen games. Maybe a couple of the guys that are playing with the ones that have a hot stick right now might get a little bit more juice into the way they're playing. And I think that Alex Iafallo had a couple of good games, couple of good looks with Connor and Scheifele. And look at that. Now he's back with Adam Lowry and Morgan Barron. And I thought they were absolutely dynamite last night. And I know you agree with me. And look, I think that a lot of people think that there's something there with Nemestikov and Perfetti, just because Nemestikov does have the tools to be such a good transporter in a way that Cole Perfetti isn't. And Cole Perfetti does too. He's a little bit more of I almost want to talk about like the one-touch passes. And I've heard Wyatt Johnson from the Dallas Stars described in his transporting style as a bit of a valve where kind of pucks kind of go through him and they come in maybe a bit ugly and he pushes them out in a way that, turns them into a little bit of added offense. And I see a little bit of that in Cole Perfetti's game. And, 1,000-game Nino, obviously massive congratulations to him. It wasn't like his most, I don't think, glowing game of the year by any means. It wasn't like overly flashy in your face good, but I think what I liked about it is that there's actually some complementary pieces of, I think, his kind of crash and bang style that works with all of those things that I said I like about Perfetti and Nemestikov. So I'm here for this middle six. I am here for this middle six. And I do find it really interesting that, my opinions and all these things that I'm sharing about them, I'm pulling from, in particular last season when the team was so good, what I liked about what they did for this group. You can't say that about any of those guys on the fourth line because they weren't here and we don't have that kind of same sample. So yeah, that middle six was looking pretty sharp, which has been the biggest challenge, right? We talked about bottom nine. I don't care about the fourth line. If the top three are okay, I don't care about the fourth line. So that's why I'm glad that we're kind of able to look at the middle six here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up Nino Niederreiter, got the silver stick before the game. Very nice ceremony. And also, there was a tribute in terms of a video with a lot of messages from family, friends, teammates, like current teammates, Vlad Nemestikov, Adam Lowry, former teammates, Nikolai Ehlers, Swiss teammates, Roman Josi, the Swiss prime minister, as Nino Niederreiter said after the game, he was shocked by that. Roger Federer and Mike McIntyre asked, have you ever played tennis with Roger Federer? And he goes, no. I stick to golf when it comes to playing with Roger Federer, which is a good call. Yeah, you don't want to play tennis against that guy. He's pretty good.
I too would not play tennis against Roger Federer.
He's pretty good.
In case anyone was wondering.
He's pretty good at what he does. That's for sure. Let's quickly get to some of Scott Arniel last night, Lyss. We'll get into the lines, and you asked him about the lines, so we'll get into that right after this. But first, this is the first question of the presser, just kind of an open-ended, his thoughts on the game, which to all of us looked like the Winnipeg Jets' best game of the season.
And what looked like your strongest game in a long time.
Yeah, no, for sure it was. It was 20 guys. That was complete throughout the lineup. All four lines looking a lot alike. D were real solid. Obviously Helly was good when he had to be, and you're right. It was probably our best, our most complete game of the year.
Most complete game of the year is how Scott Arniel put it. And then I asked him about special teams. We've talked a lot about special teams on this program and on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily over the past, couple of weeks when this team's really been sliding. Where's that power play that we saw last year? Where's the penalty kill that started the season so hot? Well, last night they got to it. The power play scored and looked very dangerous in their opportunities, and the penalty kill gave up a 5-on-3 goal late, but when it mattered early in the first period to start that game, they shut things down. And it wasn't just Connor Hellebuyck either. I mean, he had to make some saves for sure, but the penalty kill without Connor Hellebuyck was giving up, grade A's in the middle of the slot. That wasn't happening last night when the Jets were in the PK. I asked Scott Arniel about the special teams battle. Here's what he had to say.
Got on the board, looked good, and penalty kill.
Talked about it. We looked at some stuff. Both units. We talked about our specialty teams winning that specialty team battle. It's too bad we gave up, obviously 5-on-3. But at the end of the day, I thought our penalty kill did a fantastic job against a very good power play. Then the zone time with our power play, was good, and our entries were good. And so a lot of things that we kind of talked about and looked at, the guys responded in a real good way.
There's Scott Arniel on the special teams. And the last clip we have for you is a question from Lyss on the lines in terms of, we talked about the middle six. They looked effective in this game. Lyss asked Scott Arniel about that line configuration in the middle six and what he liked from that group.
With some of the combinations that you tried out?
Like I said earlier, I think all four lines, zone time, they all got through the neutral zone, Watch does a really good job of clogging up the neutral zone. I thought we got through there, whether that was with possession, making nice plays, or whether that was, chipping it and going and getting it back. But the other thing, I got to tip my hat to Adam Lowry's line. They were big. They scored a couple of goals, but they did a good job against, some heavyweights in Protas and Wilson's line. And so, at the end of the day, everybody, I thought, like I mentioned earlier, all 20 guys stepped up and did what they had to do tonight to help us win.
So there's Scott Arniel kind of singling out that Lowry line that we talked about right off the top. And, they were going up against the Alexi Protas, Tom Wilson line, and they handled their minutes incredibly well. Shots on goal with them on the ice were 8-1 for the Jets. They scored 2 5-on-5 goals, outchanced them, had more high danger chances. So Adam Lowry did his thing last night. And just lastly, before we get back to Lyss's thoughts as it pertains to Scott Arniel, I know people like seeing this, and the good vibes haven't been here on WST Sunday Live in a few weeks. So here's the jacket presentation from last night as Connor Hellebuyck returns. Nino Niederreiter hits his 1,000th game. Here's what it looked like in the Jets locker room after.
Good win, fellas. JMO, congrats. Bubs, congrats on 1,000. Hell of a confident. Let's go into Bucky.
Oh, it's been a long 3 weeks. You know what, Bubs? Congratulations. This has been an awesome part of it. You know what? You guys just played great. Thank you for stepping on the gas. Yes! Boys, you're amazing. Yeah! Great win, boys. Let's go into the man of the night. Yeah! Oh my God!
Once again, thank you much for everything, boys. It was a game I will never forget in my life, and very fortunate to be here with you guys. And winning is fun. Let's keep it going, guys. Yes!
There's the jacket presentation after the game. Nino Niederreiter at the end there saying winning is fun. And I think Jets fans and Jets players and everyone involved can absolutely agree that game last night was very fun. Lyss, we played a few clips there. You asked Scott Arniel after the game about the lines. You heard his comments on how he thought it was their most complete game of the season. What did you think of Scott Arniel's assessment of last night's game, and do you agree with as it pertains to the middle six that you asked him about?
Yeah, I think he has a pretty good finger on the pulse of this team.
One
But
could say
a couple
yeah.
of points that I want to bring up about what he said. One of them is, like you said, he singled out the Adam Lowry line, and this is something that, as hockey fans, everyone is kind of aware of this concept, but I feel like sometimes it needs to be spoken and brought up, is that, Adam Lowry did win his minutes in this game. Like you said, you listed a couple stats there in terms of what the shots and chances looked like when he was on the ice. But when the Winnipeg Jets are playing at home in particular, they are choosing who is going out against who. And every single time, Adam Lowry is being sent out against, if not the best, then the second best line. But especially in the last couple of years, he's mostly been playing against the best competition. So, I understand that two things can be true. You could have different players that have different skill sets that are better suited for different matchups. But at the end of the day, he's the guy who gets the quote unquote short end of the stick in terms of the toughest matchup. He's going out there against them. So winning his minutes is always more impressive because his job is to neutralize the other team's minutes. It's not to go out and score 2 goals or whatever it was that they did in this game. So I think it needs to be said every now and then. And so he's a guy who, since his return from injury, hasn't been, in my opinion, 100% of the player that we've known. And I think that's a huge piece of it, is that it makes it more difficult for the Winnipeg Jets to, they're playing on their heels a bit more if you're not managing top competition as well as you're kind of accustomed to. So him having a massive game against some of the heavyweights on Washington that have been such big contributors to their lineup, I think was huge. And the fact that you can, go above and beyond and not just kind of neutralize the Protuses or whatever of the world, and then also create a little bit of offense, I think is massive. And then the last thing I'll say, the second point that I wanted to make to Scott Arniel's comments, is he talked about, the neutral zone, whatever. And then he said, I can't remember exactly verbatim what his response was to the question, but basically, the chips were good, the carries were good. Like, the Winnipeg Jets had diversified offense yesterday, dude. That's what I was excited about. The fact that on the power play at 5-on-5, there were so many passes into the slot. There were so many successful retrievals off of chip-ins. Every single time they were breaking up the ice with control, I wasn't 100% certain what they were going to do upon the entry. That's huge. Sometimes when the Winnipeg Jets are feeling kind of desperate or whatever, they get really big into the chip and chase kind of part of the game. They get pucks deep, right? And when players talk about that, the whole idea is that, if you're carrying a puck in or you're making a pass, there's a possibility that it's going to get picked off and you're not going to get any zone time. So they defer to just getting it deep, eating it away at the wall for about 8 seconds, losing it anyway, and then the counterattack goes the other way. This game had a lot of different offensive generation at 5-on-5 and on the special teams units. Like, the top unit had a little bit more interesting, choices with their puck movement, and every single line had different contributions in terms of how they were creating ozone time. And then once they actually kind of had that sustained time set up, there weren't that many north-south passes kind of along the boards. They were getting it across the ice. They were finding the open guys. Like, this was fun offensive hockey from the Winnipeg Jets. So that's what I want to give them their flowers for. And, Scott O'Neill obviously puts it a lot more eloquently and, less dramatic than I am. But that was what was huge for me in this one.
Yeah, no, I like that you brought that up. And I'll go to the special teams with my kind of monologue here. And I got a few texts last night. My dad texted me in the second period, how does Connor Hellebuyck make the power play better? I don't know, but it happened because, look, they scored a goal, which was a really nice goal. And our Chud's Power Sports Power Poll coming up here is going to be ranking our top 5 goals from last night's game. But the power play just looked dangerous throughout the whole night. And you look at that goal, I talk about the middle six playing more connected hockey. There's no more connected hockey than the Winnipeg Jets when they're on their power play. And all 5 guys touch the puck in a matter of, 4 or 5 seconds, and it ends in a backdoor tap-in for Gabe Vilardi. And then that top line scores later, again, on a very nice tic-tac-toe play from Scheifele to Connor to Vilardi. And that top unit also got a power play in the third period, spent the entire 2 minutes, whether it was the top unit or the second unit, in the zone, getting chances, retrieving the puck, getting into the zone with efficiency on the entry, which had been, I never really have questions about the Jets' entry anymore, which feels weird to say because for years it felt like that was the Winnipeg Jets' issue on the power play. But look, these last couple of years, they've gotten into the zone very efficiently. And once they get there, they're snapping the puck around. And we just hadn't seen that. Whether it was Iafallo on the top unit or Perfetti, we just hadn't seen that in the last couple of weeks. I don't know how Connor Hellebuyck did it. What can't this guy do? But he absolutely improved the power play last night because they were snapping it around. And look, when the Jets' power play is at their best too, they're very spread out, but they're kind of like baiting the penalty kill to get aggressive and chase them out to the blue line. And Perfetti has the puck at the blue line, and a Washington defender chases him, so he gets it down to Scheifele, and there's a Washington defender on him who goes up to Morrissey, over to Connor, backdoor to Vilardi. It's like, how is Gabe Vilardi wide open backdoor? Well, all 5 guys just touched the puck in 4 seconds, and the Washington PK, which is very aggressive, is right on them. And look, if you can snap the puck around like that, you can score a 5-on-5. You can score on the power play. And I don't know how he did it, Lyss, but Connor Hellebuyck improving the defensive structure, secondary scoring, power play, everything. Connor Hellebuyck, give this guy the MVP already. He does it all.
Yeah. Crazy take, innovative take,
Yeah.
MVP Connor Hellebuyck. Yeah. No, I think that the power play was so fun. And you're totally right. That's exactly it. And I think that I don't know if you want to bring up the goal visualizer or not, or if we're going to wait for our Chud's Power Sports Power Poll, but I think that first Gabe Vilardi goal in particular that you're talking about is exactly that. And that's what you do on a power play. Like you articulate it so perfectly that I don't even need to kind of expand on it, but it's so important to kind of divert from your norm when it comes to power play movement. And, teams study special teams a lot. Like that's a huge part of hockey right now, especially. And so, we know who the threats are for the Jets on their power play and how quickly this puck moves. Like that pass from Mark Scheifele in particular, Cole Perfetti's my guy. I'm not going to dunk on Cole Perfetti or something like that. But his first pass there, like he makes a good call, kind of gets that puck back around, kind of get it out of harm's way or whatever. But how quickly Mark Scheifele gets that pass off instead of corralling it and holding on to it a bit, taking a look around. That's what changes the course of this chance for me. And I think that you can see how spread out the penalty killers are. And I don't know if there's a miscommunication that kind of happens in front of the net or something like that. But I've always been just so fascinated by Gabe Vilardi's ability to kind of evade coverage in front of the net and everything. And this was one of the nicest goals of the game. We'll get there in a bit, but it was so important that every single player, like you said, touched that puck so quickly. Like they saw one another, they were connecting. And this happens in a game where the guys who make some of the best passes on this particular play, being Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, whatever, didn't have their best game of the year. And it was okay. The last couple of games, the Winnipeg Jets have gotten burnt by a couple of really bad mistakes, and they don't have the run support to kind of cover up for it. This is a game where, you didn't need the top line to absolutely shred at 5-on-5, but they had a couple of really good looks in the power play. And even when you don't score in a power play, there were a couple of, particularly later in the game, of times where they spent the entire 2 minutes just absolutely laying the force. And even if you don't score, which at a point like that, when you're already up by a couple of goals, it's not the end of the world if you don't. the team's on their heels. The team is tired. You're getting momentum. All these different things that kind of help tilt the ice in your favor. And so I think the power play was huge for the team tonight.
Yeah, last night. It could be tonight if they played tonight, but they don't play till tomorrow, Monday. But last thing, I've played this goal a few times. Slap pass Kyle Connor is one of my favorite Kyle Connors because he tucks 40 in his sleep. Like, we know that he's an incredible shooter, has an incredible release, and I don't think I never expect him to do it, but when he does, like, this is right on the tape for Gabe Vilardi backdoor. Such a nice play, such a nice goal for the Winnipeg Jets. Gave them a 4-0 lead at the time, late in that second period. Kind of, erased any hope that the Washington Capitals might have had for a comeback. It was 3-0. They take a penalty late. There's, 6 seconds left in that second period, and Gabe Vilardi gets his first of 2 in the game, which is his 15th of the season, and then later got his 16th of the season. But to help us kind of break down which goals, we brought that one up first, but there's a lot of goals last night. And there was one that people in chat are talking about too, quite a bit, that we're going to have to get to because we have to address it here on WST Sunday Live. It was that nice. But to help us with our power poll, let's give a quick shout out to our friends over at Chud's Power Sports. Chuds has been powering Manitobans for over 80 years at the corner of Highway 8 and 231 in Gimli. They have so many power sports options right here on their website that I have behind me on the screen here, chudspowersports.com. They've got great deals as well, as winter is definitely here. I mean, if there was any question, and maybe you went to the game last night and had to walk outside for any amount of time, you know that winter is here, and the folks at Chud's Power Sports are fired up for it. They've got snowmobiles, they've got ice houses, RVs, golf carts, tractors, dirt bikes, street bikes, ATVs, UTVs, boats, and so much more. And check out their clearance site as well, truenorthparts.ca, where they have a lot of items, in relation to snowmobile equipment, ice fishing equipment, all of those things on sale at a very good price. So go check that out as well, truenorthparts.ca. Check out their website, chudspowersports.com, or check them out and get the great service of Chuds out at the corner of Highway 8 and 231 out in Gimli. Let's get to our Chuds Power Sports Power Poll from last night's game. And Lyss, this is our top 5 goals. And this has happened before. Maybe it was the Pittsburgh game, I want to say off the top of my head.
I think that sounds right, yeah.
The Jets scored 5 goals on a Saturday, and again, this one, there wasn't even an empty netter. These were all 5 goals. So the number one, which people have been talking about in chat, the Logan Stanley bat-in, I was befuddled in the press box last night watching that one. I mean, what on earth was that? Logan Stanley
Shook to my core.
Yeah,
Shook
Logan
to my
Stanley
core.
gets his 5th of the season, batting it. Okay, so a shot comes from the point and it banks off the end wall and kind of takes a weird bounce and hops up into the crease, and he just bats it by Logan Thompson for his 5th of the season.
What is he
like,
doing
who is
there?
this guy?
What is he doing there?
What is he doing there? Who is this guy? Like, what is going on? Anyways, Logan Stanley opens the scoring.
Skillful goal. That's such a skillful goal. Not necessarily hockey skill, but it takes skill.
Yeah, Logan Stanley in front of a national audience on Hockey Night in Canada opens the scoring, batting it past Logan Thompson. Unbelievable. And maybe I'll bring up the tweet after. James Duthie has his Team Canada projected roster, crossed out Connor Bedard, put Logan Stanley at right wing number 1. I'll bring that up later. But that's number 1.
So good.
Number 2 is the goal that we just showed over and over and over again. The Gabe Vilardi tap in backdoor. So many passes, so connected. The slot pass from Kyle Connor, backdoor. Vilardi taps it in. The third one is Gabe Vilardi's 2nd of the night, the tic-tac-toe, where Matt Waugh throws an absolute pizza right up the middle of the ice. Mark Scheifele steals it, gets it to Kyle Connor, over to Gabe Vilardi. Again, we know that top line, when they have 3-on-2 scenarios or 3-on-1 scenarios, they're great at capitalizing on them. That was another one. Nice tic-tac-toe goal. Number 4, Morgan Barron. That Barron, Lowry, Iafallo line got on the board twice with the 4th and 5th goal. And look, it's that grindy style, third line style for these 2 goals to be at the bottom of our power poll list because, they're ugly goals, but Morgan's wasn't, I don't think. Like, it was a nice net drive, 3-on-2, Lowry with a nice saucer pass to the middle, Barron with a good deflection on net, gets the Jets a 2-0 lead in the first period. And again, when the Jets have had good periods this season too, it's not often that they have gotten rewarded for it. And coming out of that period up 2-0, out shooting the Caps 13-3, all of those things, like that was a great start to this one. And then number 5, Alex Iafallo is trying to make a pass to the front of the net. It goes off of sort of and off of his skate and in. So that's easily number 5 for me. But what do you think of this Chud's Power Sports Power Poll?
I think it's wonderful, and I agree with you in that assessment of the Alex Iafallo goal. But hey, get pucks on net, I guess, if that's the way you want to go. But Murat asked Scott Arniel about that Morgan Barron goal at the end of the game, and then he kind of clipped Scott Arniel's comments to his earlier point that he made on Twitter at WPG Murat Atesh, the Athletic. He says, just want to point out some keys to this goal one more time in relation to this Morgan Barron one. They win the battle down low in their own zone. Pressure release pass, clean exit, enough speed from Barron that Lowry's passing somewhere good to go. You don't get a chance at a chance, let a goal without all of it. And so Murat kind of puts this on Twitter and then asks Scott Arniel about it afterwards. And Scott Arniel kind of makes a not snide comment, but a cheeky comment being like, oh yeah, like that's going in the video room, right? Because they do everything right on that play. And look, rush goal. It's a rush goal.
Rush goal.
There's so much evidence about how many goals in the National Hockey League are scored within the first couple seconds of entering the zone. They're so much more dangerous as a baseline than when you set up and create some ozone pressure and all that sort of stuff. And so great to see a rush goal. It came at a great time in the game. You know, I think that it helped kind of instill how the Jets were feeling. They're kind of feeling themselves a little bit, right? There's a lot to really like about that one.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, the Vilardi goals, like Vilardi is, again, I think the top line's performance, I've had like a semi take that it's flying under the radar a little bit because there was so much going wrong up until last night's game with the middle six and getting offense from elsewhere that we were kind of taking for granted the fact that the Jets were losing 5-2 every night, but the 2 goals were coming from the top line. And Gabe Vilardi with his, 15th and 16th goals of the season, he's had a great start on that top line and on the top power play and all of those things. And year 1 of a 6-year extension, this is exactly how you would have wanted Gabe Vilardi to start this with this extension. And yeah, a lot of people liking the power poll, like the Logan Stanley goal. Man, and then
easy number 1.
Easy
Connor
number
and I were
1.
talking about this. That didn't even come up for discussion. I was like, so obviously that's number 1.
Yeah.
Cinema.
Donnie Boy asks the real question: what was Stanley doing there in that position?
That's what I'm saying. I love it. It's hilarious. It's giving Billy Hainala. Logan Stanley and Billy Hainala will never escape one another. It's
I don't know, but it was awesome.
Always.
It was awesome. Like, what
So
a way
good.
to start hockey in Canada. Just like absolutely unbelievable. But hey, Logan Stanley, 5th goal of the season. He had 5 goals across the last 5 seasons, Liz, and now he has 5 this season. This guy's on a shooting tear right now. But anyways, that's our Chud's Power Sports.
Unironically, it is important that, you know, the Winnipeg Jets were doing a lot of good to kind of start that period. But what happens when you don't have, you know, enough guys who can score goals for you is that momentum can get burnt and flip so quickly if you don't actually capitalize on it. So scoring goals to actually, you know, put pen to paper, the good that you're doing is really, really important. And sometimes you just need elite finishing defensemen to do that for you, I guess. And so I give him credit where it's due, man. Like, holy.
Give him credit. Yeah, here it is on the goal visualizer. Yeah, Logan Stanley. You can see, like, Morrissey's rotating over, so that kind of gives Stanley the green
and Adam
light.
Lowry's like, I got to go for a change, man.
Adam Lowry's like,
tired.
I'm out of here. I've seen enough. Yeah, but you can see,
but look
like,
at that pass, though, into the middle of the ice. Look at that pass into the middle of the ice from Josh Morrissey. And then he slides over, right?
Yeah.
And everything. But
yeah.
It's that pass, and that kind of shows, it adds a little bit more pressure time. But watch this pass here if you're watching. Into the middle of the ice for Vlad Meskov. He gets a shot off, and it's great. And then they retrieve the puck properly, which is wonderful. But instead of Josh Morrissey just ripping it across the line to Logan Stanley or ripping it around the boards, passing the puck into the guts of the ice is huge. It's huge.
It is. Even if it results in just an easy pad save for Logan Thompson, it's huge. And yeah, you can see Scheifele's rotating up, Morrissey rotating over. That gives Stanley the green light to jump on a rebound, which he did. He jumped.
So did Nino Niederreiter get a plus for this goal? I'm gonna watch it again.
Let's watch it again.
He gets the plus. Watch Adam Lowry. He goes for a little rip.
Because I believe if they're both, I don't think he'd get one for that because I think Lowry's still technically on the ice. Like, I don't know how that works with both guys are on the ice. Both guys are on the ice, and I don't think they each get a plus. So we'd have to
call it back for too many men. Call it back.
Yeah, call it back. No, early change there. No, but anyways, that's our Chuds Power Sports Power Poll. Shout out to our friends over at Chuds Power Sports for their great support of WST Sunday Live and great support of our Power Polls. We really appreciate it. Yeah, some people in chat saying Lowry gets the plus. Doug is saying that. So I don't know, man. Plus minus
controversy.
tough. Plus minus gets tough sometimes. But anyways, let's get to our pre-tape list. And how about you kind of tee this one up? Dmitri Filipovic from the Hockey PDOcast. One of our favorites, our good buddy, if you will, is how I introduced him. And yeah, the Hockey PDOcast, I say it at the end of the interview, but easily my favorite, national hockey podcast. When I want to get a good pulse on the NHL, listen to the Hockey PDOcast. Dimitri's the host, has some awesome guests on there. But we had him on yesterday, Lyss, before the game for a little bit of a talk on the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I think that this segment is going to be a really good kind of contrast for the rest of our conversation because, look, it's our job to come on here and talk about the game we saw last night and also the bigger picture when applicable. And the bigger picture is still applicable here, right? There have been a lot of cracks that have kind of shown in the Winnipeg Jets in terms of their personnel, their structure, all these different things. And, Dimitri is one of the smartest hockey minds that, covers the National Hockey League, and he does such a good job on his program of, they kind of talk about the fun of the National Hockey League and everything like that, but they also will dive into the nitty-gritty of very specific plays and very specific, things that they're watching, what their observations are, and it's very informed. They are able to, pull a lot of content from one team and relate it to another and stuff because they cover so many teams and everything on their program. So his insight on the team was really, really fun and really interesting. So you guys are really going to like this one. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of what's gone well for the Jets right now, what hasn't gone well, what they need to change, and kind of what the path forward is for this group because of how clearly they believe in their core and kind of what the next steps are to improve in the areas that they really need to.
For sure. And yeah, we'll be back with our trending up, down, and burning questions. So stick around after the pre-tape for that. And listen, I'm also going to talk about the Quinn Hughes trade, which
who's that?
Yeah, exactly. Central Division got even better,
Hughes Bowl
folks.
Tonight. No Hughes Bowl tonight.
And maybe we'll even talk about the Tristan Jarry trade as he got his first win last night. If you want to talk goalies, Liz, I know you love talking
We
goalies.
beefed about that yesterday a little bit. We really did. So we can bring everyone else up to speed too.
Yes, exactly. But here's our conversation from yesterday with Dmitri Filipovic from the Hockey PDOcast. Right now on WST Sunday Live, we are bringing in our good buddy, Dmitri Filipovic from the Hockey PDOcast. Dmitri, thanks so much for taking the time. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's unfortunate the circumstances we're talking under. I feel like the last time I was on this show, the vibes were incredibly high. We were almost, if I remember correctly, we were previewing like playoff opponents and talking about the other contenders and how the Jets stack up. And now we might need to be talking about how they stack up against rebuilding teams and ones in the draft lottery. But we'll see how the vibes go today. Hopefully we can raise the energy a little bit and have some fun anyways.
Absolutely. We're good at doing that. We're good at having some fun here on WST Sunday Live. So we'll find a way. You did recently just do, every Monday morning, you do a Sunday special with Thomas Strantz. You guys opened up your last one talking about the Winnipeg Jets for an extended period of time. Since then, they've returned home and dropped a little bit of, the first couple of games on this homestand. What have you seen from the Winnipeg Jets this season that led to that 20-minute start to the Sunday special and then recently at the start of this homestand?
Yeah, it was a tough conversation. It was we had to do it with a heavy heart because as listeners know, we were all in on the Jets last year, talking them up, how much we enjoyed watching them play. And that just hasn't been the case for me this year. Like I was worried heading into the season because obviously whenever you lose a talent like Nikolai Ehlers on that second line and the speed that he brings to the table, they were going to get slower and less talented. But then choosing to replace him the way they did with a bunch of veterans and guys in their mid-30s who clearly are lacking from a pace perspective, the drop-off has been even more steep than I thought it was going to be. And so, I mean, on the one hand, it's encouraging that they've been kind of hanging around, especially early in the year with all the guys out with Lowry and Sandberg and Perfetti missing time. And I was like, all right, well, they've cobbled this together nicely. The baseline is still high because of the goaltending, because of the special teams. And then the bottom's fallen out even further since, obviously. Not having Hellebuyck for an extended period of that time certainly hurt. But I think the bigger issue for me is just the offensive generation of this team. Like when the top line isn't out there, including Morrissey out there with them, they just struggle to create meaningful looks. And we're to the point where any sort of even small glimpse of offense from a Nino Niederreiter or a Perfetti or a Alex Iafallo, all of a sudden you're like clinging onto it for dear life. And those instances have been so few and far between. So when you compare that to some of the other central teams like the Avs and the Stars, they're fighting a really uphill battle right now. And it's kind of tough to remain, I guess, positive about this team's outlook this season and how they can meaningfully compete with those two teams.
I feel like, you mentioned Nikolai Ehlers, and I think I put Nikolai Ehlers into a similar camp that you've been putting Connor Hellebuyck lately, in that you don't want to absolve the team of responsibility because of that player's absence. Even though it is stark and it does have a huge impact on the team, there are other things that we can't kind of ignore. You, on your show, always do such a good job of kind of referring to things in the context of the tactics and things that are going on the ice. Even before the Connor Hellebuyck injury kind of came, there were probably some things, and there definitely were some things, because you talked about it for months kind of leading up to it, that were causing amber flags, orange flags, maybe not quite red flags, but with the team, that, this exposing time without their starting goaltender has shown a lot of the cracks that, maybe we were expecting to see in a little bit in some ways. What were some of the things that you saw early in the season from the team that were making you kind of worried about their longevity and their ability to keep up with last year's pace?
Yeah, I think what was alarming first off was the defensive slippage, and Hellebuyck was covering for some of it, and that was understandable, right? When you subtract Dylan Sandberg and the impact he has not only on that pair in a matchup assignment, but then sort of the trickle down on the rest of the blue line, and then Adam Lowry as well. Certainly that was to be expected, but they were just spending such long periods of time throughout games in their own zone, kind of bleeding possession and looks to the other team, and so it put them in this spot where they didn't really have a lot of their own possession and weren't able to accumulate any sort of volume. They were able to get around it with these opportunistic counters from the top line and just how efficient that group is. Then Sandberg and Lowry come back. There is a bit of an uptick in terms of the underlying numbers. I think they're in the top 20 now, according to Sportlogic, in both expected goals against and expected goals generated themselves. And those both were in the bottom 5 in the first 15, 20 games of the year. So that is encouraging. But then when you watch this team, even during this homestand, there's just such a evident lack of offense from the other three lines. Like, it feels like it's so hard to come by. And I think that was the benefit of Nealers, even though I know sometimes it would frustrate fans that he'd have these stretches where he kind of didn't look as involved or engaged and he'd go a couple games without scoring. Just having him when things aren't going right to go out there and create something out of nowhere and just dazzle off the rush, you always had that available to you. And so now without that, they don't have that element to their offense. And they're just, I think they're as reliant on their top line as any team in the league right now. And that just has not been the case for this group the past couple of years. So I think that's the biggest problem. You look around now, and other than Perfetti just really getting going, I don't see what the path for this team is to score enough at 5-on-5 to keep up with the other best teams in the league.
Yeah, and as of late, Dimitri, and we'll get into maybe some of the solutions for this Winnipeg Jets group moving forward and what they really need to address these issues. But, you know, they were rough at 5-on-5 to start the season. As you mentioned, no Sandberg, Lowry, Perfetti, but their special teams carried them through, and obviously they had Connor Hellebuyck. The script has kind of entirely been flipped in this past couple of weeks. You lose Connor Hellebuyck to injury, and the 5-on-5 play is a little bit better. You know, some nights you're looking at their underlying numbers and they're outchancing teams at 5-on-5, outshooting teams at 5-on-5, but it's been the special teams that's actually killed them. 66% on the penalty kill since the start of November. I believe 16% on the power play since the start of November. How big of kind of an impact can that have for a team that's already struggling to get to the dominant level at 5-on-5 that they want to be at when their special teams are that much of a problem?
Yeah, it's huge. Obviously, like for the playoffs, I think we look at stuff like 5-on-5 metrics and puck possession because it signals that you're a dominant team and you're going to be matchup independent in terms of regardless of who you play against, you're going to have your fair share of looks. In the regular season, we've seen countless examples of teams, the Jets sometimes in the past as well, where it's like if you have elite goaltending, you have at least one elite special teams asset. Your baseline is so high in terms of things that can win you a game on any given night or just kind of scratch and claw points out where you might not have otherwise deserved it. And so that's been a massive problem here. I think the power play kind of drying up a little bit has been surprising because obviously it was a unit that 2 years ago, even when the Jets were humming along in the regular season, was a bit of a struggle for them. Then they went out and got Sean Monahan and it bounced back a little bit. And then last year just took off. And what correlated with that, I think, was putting Nikolai Ehlers on that unit and his ability to retrieve pucks and create looks for others. And they were able to get by without it at the start of the season. And I thought the continuity of Velarde net front and the connection Scheifele and Connor have, and Morrissey, of course, on the point, was going to be good enough to still get those kinds of results they had last year. And that hasn't really been the case recently. So I'm actually curious for your guys' take in terms of what you're seeing there from that unit and why goals have been harder to come by for them over the past, 10, 15 games.
Do I want to talk about the Jets power play? Yes, obviously.
Yes.
I do. I think and it obviously goes to show how locked in and in tune with the team Dimitri is too, because I get so frustrated when people talk about Nikolai Ehlers' absence in the power play and they're like, they lost their best zone entry guys, even though Ehlers was like their fourth option. He wasn't doing that on the power play. He was a 5-on-5, but I think it's one of those things that the versatility that he would kind of bring, they had so much movement last year, in particular with guys like, Velarde and Perfetti and how quickly they would change their spots and everything. And obviously Perfetti being hurt for a good chunk of that, the beginning of the season, I think makes it hard to kind of see what the full scope of what they can do. He's been demoted a couple of times since he's been back as well. But I almost want to pinpoint it on something more almost psychological, in the sense that at 5-on-5, that line has had to do so much of the heavy lifting that it's almost like, I feel like there's maybe some exhaustion or fatigue that I feel like has a factor in that, where what they're creating and the ozone time that they're kind of sustaining at 5-on-5 is similar at times to what you almost create on a power play if you're able to carry and set that up properly. So I definitely would want to dive into that a little bit more as well, because it's been fascinating, the special teams, especially with the start that the penalty kill had to this season. But I want to kind of dive into, you talked about, we're going to have some fun with this segment here, and this is where I want to get into the fun stuff. So we're going to kind of go with the Goosebumps choose your own path route here, and we're going to go over a couple of different things that the Winnipeg Jets could possibly do as a group if they were to kind of pick a direction and stick to it. Because that's something that I think a lot of hockey fans, they disagree on what the direction is, but a lot of times people do kind of align on the idea that you need to pick something and kind of run with it. So if the Winnipeg Jets wanted to kind of get better right now and say, okay, we believe in our core's ability to keep up with Dallas and Colorado. We think that this group that won the President's Trophy last year is in there somewhere, and they just need something to come in and kind of push it. We know that last year, the trade acquisitions that they made weren't exactly glowing, and the results that Tanev and Shen and guys like that kind of had to the lineup. But what are some things that you think would kind of make sense if the Winnipeg Jets went kind of all in, all together, we're going, this is a contender, and they kind of leaned into that belief and identity?
That's a difficult question, just because we've seen the state of the market in particular, there's just fewer guys available than before. Part of it is because the standings are so discombobulated right now, where 25 to 27 teams feel like they're kind of hanging around, and so they're not really feeling the pressure to sell right now. So I think there's fewer guys available than would have been in the past. I would almost say that, and I understand why the organization has been somewhat hesitant to do so, much to our frustration, but I feel like there's some instances where they could almost have addition by subtraction with some of the impending UFAs they have, if they actually took the role of a little bit of a short-term seller for the time being, and then gave more opportunities to some of the young guys from the AHL to see if you could infuse a little bit of speed and acknowledge that there's going to be a learning curve along the way, maybe some mistakes that you otherwise wouldn't have had, but the upside long-term, even by the end of this season, is going to outweigh those risks. So I feel like I would be tempted to go that way, as opposed to some sort of a Band-Aid approach where, on that Sunday show you're referencing, Drance was like, all right, well, maybe they should go out and acquire Kiefer Sherwood. And I'm sure that he would help. He's got speed. He's, scoring a bunch of goals. He'd be a valuable addition to anyone. But I don't know where that's ultimately getting to you when you have to go up against Dallas and Colorado. So I wouldn't want to be trading premium futures for that. So I would almost rather go kind of like this arbitrage approach, where right now we're in mid-December, you sell a little bit, you take stock of where you're at for a month or two from now, and then you've still got time till the deadline to reassess. If the team starts playing better, you start getting better results, then maybe you could buy a little bit more as well with some of that stuff you got for those guys you sold, especially since there's so few sellers right now that, as down as I am on a lot of these guys, I imagine anyone that's available right now is going to fetch you a nice little return if you sell them. And so I'd be tempted. I know it's kind of like an admission of waving a white flag in a way, and for a team that won the President's Trophy last year, it's a tough pill to swallow. But I feel like in the grand scheme of things, that would probably be the most pragmatic approach, as opposed to, blindly burying your head in the sand and being like, oh, we're a rental winger in our middle six away from really turning this thing around, because I think the issues just extend far beyond that.
Before I get to asking you about what a soft sell looks like, I'm
Connor's
glad
saying the
you
victory
brought
lap.
that
He's good.
because I was sitting in my car listening to the Sunday special on Monday morning on my way to Jets practice, as I usually do, and I heard Drance bring up, maybe they could be a team that's in the Kiefer Sherwood sweepstakes. And I was thinking to myself, that I don't think really solves much for this team. And I'm glad that you went, well, I think it's the opposite. I think they would need even more skill and less, like the Kiefer Sherwood brings like the jam and that part of his game and the grit. And I feel like the Jets have a lot of guys like that. So you're just kind of adding another middle six kind of good offensive option to a team that has a lot of those and clearly isn't producing right now. But you mentioned a soft sell and kind of that being the way that the Winnipeg Jets could go here. Just looking over at Puckpedia at some of their pending unrestricted free agents, you have Gustav Nyquist, Jonathan Taves, Tanner Pearson, Cole Koepke, Luke Shen, Colin Miller, Logan Stanley. Does that soft sell mentality looking at the deadline there kind of just get whatever you can for those guys and reload with a team that is, Hellebuyck's 32, Scheifele's 32 next season? You're just kind of addition by subtraction, sell those guys and kind of retool in the offseason?
Yeah, sell them all. Anyone that wants to buy any of those guys, I'm into it. I mean, I get it where people are like, listen, this team's going to have cap space regardless. There's going to be no one available at UFA. We know that they're probably not going to be a destination spot with a bunch of free agents anyways. And so you subtract these guys, you have cap space. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to fill that? But I feel like whatever assets you get in terms of draft picks or prospects, even if they're modest, you could use down the road to make a trade and add someone that route as well. And not to mention the fact that I do think with some of those guys, I think just removing them from almost Moneyball style, where it's like, all right, if Scott Arniel's going to keep playing Logan Stanley and Luke Shen together, let's just remove them and not give them the possibility of even doing that. Maybe you're going to see better results. You're going to get some young guys with a breath of fresh air, more pace, and get better results accidentally almost in a way by doing so. So I'd be very intrigued to see them do that. I'm not sure they will, but I feel like if I was running this team, that's a direction I'd go right now, and kind of take my chances, because we know what we're getting from this group right now, and it's clearly not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that we often talk about on our show, and pretty much everyone who covers this team in the market in any capacity kind of always does so with the asterisk of like, but also this is the ownership group and this is the management team that we have to work with, and this is kind of how they like to do things. And, we talk about how the whole idea of a crash and burn rebuild is never really within the realm of possibility for this team and how they want to run things. And so they're going to want to make this group better. Like the whole idea of, oh yeah, sell everyone off and sell Cole Perfetti too while you're at it kind of thing is just it's not going to happen. And on your show, you often are a big fan of anything that makes kind of hockey management decisions fun. I brought up the Team North America on your show just the other day, talking about that. You're talking about, offer sheets. If we got more of those, how fun that would be. And one thing that you've been kind of advocating from since the beginning of its kind of inception with the new CBA was this whole concept of potentially having a miniature double trade deadline with this new concept of this 75-day retention window. So for folks who aren't familiar, that's the whole idea that a player cannot be moved twice within 75 days. So leading up to the trade deadline, if a player gets traded in January, they cannot be flipped again ahead of the trade deadline. So that puts the deadline at something like the end of this month ahead of the trade deadline. And I feel like the Winnipeg Jets, in my opinion, are like a prime contender for that sort of move where you make a really early trade because things aren't looking so great right now. And if it doesn't work out, you could flip that player again as part of like a bigger sell kind of closer to the deadline if that's the position you continue to find yourself in the winter. Is that something that you think kind of makes sense for this team as well? Or is that a route that you could see them going? And if so, what do you think that would kind of look like in terms of, how to not exactly, like you said, wave the white flag and look like you're kind of buying in on this group, but also buying yourself the flexibility to kind of get out of it if it doesn't work?
Yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense. I guess the one issue is it's not necessarily an organization that's proven very willing to eat dead money in the past necessarily, in terms of like kind of that concept of weaponizing cap space, like buying draft picks and basically paying for other teams to have players. So I'm not sure we necessarily see that from them, but I feel like a calculated approach like that would make a lot of sense. I mean, I'd like to see that just around the league in general. I feel like it presents an interesting buying opportunity for some of these teams who don't really know where they stand, don't know what it's going to look like by the trade deadline. You try to improve a little bit right now and make it a bit of a step forward, see if you can get some contributions. And if it doesn't work out, then you still have that window, as you mentioned, to retain and sell that player again before the trade deadline. So that's certainly an interesting opportunity. I mean, we've seen this in the past. I think of a team like the Blues, for example. Now, some of the players involved were more premium assets than a Logan Stanley or a Luke Shen or a Tanner Pearson, for example. But I remember like one year they were hanging around the playoffs, and then towards the trade deadline, they wound up, I actually think, ironically, selling Stasny to the Jets that season. And they got a first back. They sort of waved the white flag for that season, even though they had a pretty veteran team that had higher expectations. And then shortly thereafter, they wound up making a Stanley Cup run and winning it ultimately in 2018, I believe. So that would be an interesting path that I'd like to see them explore. I think like you can get really creative. Unfortunately, we haven't seen this organization really be very creative in that regard. And so I'm not sure if that's something they would genuinely entertain. It might be wishful thinking on our part here to be like, all right, well, let's fantasy book this, and this for them. But that's what the show's all about, right? We're trying to have some fun. And I feel like that's probably the most fun and sort of creative path, I think, for the Jets here to see what they can do with this season while keeping their options open. Because I think this would be a big issue for them if they hadn't gotten the Connor contract done previously, if they hadn't figured out what to do with Velarde and Sandberg, and those were kind of looming large as free agent options. And then they're like, oh, well, we need to try to compete this year to convince them to stay. They've gotten a lot of their most important work done contractually. All these guys that are part of the core are here for at least the next couple of years. And so I don't think there's as much desperation to Stanley Cup or bust this season necessarily. I feel like you've afforded yourself a bit of wiggle room to maybe take a small step back in the view of next season going for it more decisively and not necessarily fully rebuilding, but kind of retooling on the fly. So yeah, I feel like that'd be a really interesting option for them right now.
Yeah, I think maybe to almost kind of put a pin in this conversation, you mentioned some of those big pieces that they have locked up, and on your program, there's been so many different conversations about kind of the bigger picture of the change in how the CBA looks and how many players are no longer hitting unrestricted free agency in particular, and how that kind of bodes well for a team like the Jets that has their team and core as locked up as they do. But one of, I take every opportunity on this show to talk about my guy, Cole Perfetti. And he's kind of the only one that's a big kind of question mark for this team going into next year. And that's something that Connor and I kind of, anytime there's a little bit of dead air between the two of us, it's like, all right, what does Cole Perfetti's deal look like? Like, we're very kind of at a loss, in the same way that we were when he signed just 2 years ago, because of the whole idea of, what could this player still do, and the different ages and roles and all these different things. Where are you kind of at with him, just in terms of where you think either what his deal could look like or where you're at with that player? Because we have really differing opinions on him kind of in the Winnipeg market here. Yeah,
I mean, obviously this year's been a struggle, starting with the injury and then coming back and not really producing to the level he was at previously. I'm still a believer. I thought he was phenomenal last year. Now, understandably, I think beyond the health and kind of rounding into form after missing that many games to start off, just look at who he's playing with and kind of what he has to do now compared to last year, where he was in such a perfect spot playing with Ehlers, who could do a lot of the heavy lifting in transition and kind of just get him the puck, and then he could thrive from there. I'd be careful with this one in terms of managing the relationship, because last year we spoke a lot about how it was a pretty contentious RFA negotiation the previous time and what they ultimately wound up settling at. And so you certainly don't want to alienate the player further. I'd be very tempted to just bite the bullet and go long term on him, just as a value add proposition, because he's going to be 24 by the rest of his 20s. Hope that what he was last year is more representative of what he's going to be moving forward. And if it doesn't work out, or where you have to pivot on the fly later, if you sign him to a certain AAV now, we know that a couple of years from now, a lot of teams are going to be interested because he's talented, he's productive, and he's going to be in his prime seasons. And so you could wind up revisiting that and selling him later if you so choose to. So I feel like for a lot of these deals for guys in this age range, even if there's some sticker shock for whatever the AAV is going to be like on his next deal, assuming it's 6, 7, 8 years, I'm generally going to like those deals, just because we know that 2-3 years from now, the price of that player is going to go up even further with more money available. And so getting him in at this price is just going to be more valuable than not. So I really would hope that they would go long-term this time and not do what they did last time, which was go a couple of years and then put yourself in a spot where now on his next deal, he's going to be an expiring UFA and you're going to have to be panicking about what to do with him.
Yeah, that's a storyline that I feel like is flying a little bit under the radar with this Winnipeg Jets season. Everyone's freaking out because they're 5 points out of the basement of the NHL. And yeah, Cole Perfetti's in a contract year and an RFA, and you raised some great points there, Dimitri. Just before we let you go, you guys did a Team Canada kind of Olympic pulse check a few weeks ago. I want to know where you're at right now on Mark Scheifele, Connor Bedard, and Macklin Celebrini. And I'll throw Matthew Schaefer in there on the blue line. Less so, in Scheifele's case. Schaefer's not going to impact whether or not Scheifele makes the team. But where are you at on Team Canada and sort of those bubble guys? And what do you see them doing as they name the team? I believe it's December 31st is when the final naming happens.
Yeah, I've been a Mark Scheifele fan, so I want to put that out there. I just feel like for the purposes of a team like Team Canada, based on what he is asked to do and then what he does on the Jets, that wouldn't necessarily be representative of what he would do on Team Canada. And so you get into a spot where it's like, are you maximizing the player? Are you going to be asking him to do stuff that he's actually going to be able to do, as well as some other options available to you? I think he's been so good this year in doing the heavy lifting and creating for this Jets team that I feel like he's certainly worthy of an inclusion there. There's just so many centers available, whether it's those young guys you mentioned, whether it's a Nick Suzuki in Montreal who wasn't on this team at the Four Nations. There's so many players to choose from. I'm not sure where they stand with it. I feel like how well Celebrini and Bedard have played, I feel like they've certainly played their way onto this roster, at least one of them. And if that's the case, it's going to make it pretty difficult to include Scheifele on it. So that is a little bit unfortunate, but man, I've been blown away because he was obviously so good and productive in the past, but I feel like he's been even better this year. And that's pretty impressive for a guy at this stage of his career.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like
go ahead, Les.
I have something to say about this because I think that it's just like there's been so many people that I feel like have almost overcorrected their opinions on this after the Four Nations, where I feel like we need to kind of place guys on like a continuum of like, the best player available versus the roles that guys need to fill. And we're at the point where we're talking between guys. This isn't like a galaxy brain take for some terrible hockey player to fill a specific role that the team needs. And I think we're almost in a lot of conversations throwing away role a bit too much, because I am in agreement that, you don't leave a Nick Suzuki at home for, I don't even know, like one of those down the lineup, like a Jonathan Taves or whatever, with some people with these outlandish shakes that they have, right? Where, the gap between what those two players can do productivity wise is so vast, but it's not there between guys like Mark Scheifele and Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini. So if you want to kind of look at the roles that those players can provide, I think there's a lot more validity to that kind of conversation.
Yeah. I also feel like, and listen, this might be too like simplistic, but what he does on the Jets is so impressive because of like how much of the heavy lifting he has to do, and all the creation is pretty much on his and Kyle Connor's plate, right? And so all of a sudden now in Team Canada, it's like it would certainly be a lesser role. Now maybe he would thrive in that because he gets to play less, he has more energy, he'd be more involved defensively as a result of it, and so maybe he would look great in that situation to go along with all the stuff he does offensively. But I just feel like it's such an embarrassment of riches in terms of the guys up front, and I'm with you. It's not like it was maybe in previous Olympic cycles where it's like either this bottom six grinder or a star player, and we have to fill that role. Like all the bottom six grinder types now are star players on their own teams, and it's just a matter of preference and kind of a personal preference, I guess, for what you're looking for in constructing the edges of this roster.
Absolutely. And we'll be glued to whether or not Mark Scheifele makes the team, of course, but here in this market, we think Josh Morrissey's a lock. We think Kyle Connor's a lock for Team USA, Connor Hellebuyck, of course. And we talked to Nino Niederreiter today, who is a lock for sure for the Swiss team. And there's a few other guys on the team like that as well. But Dimitri, thank you so much for taking the time. We really, really appreciate it. On the way out, let people know when and where they can find the Hockey PDOcast.
Yeah, it's the usual. You can listen to us on the Sportsnet Radio Network, putting up a couple new shows on the feed there. We're also on Patreon these days. So if you want to subscribe to some extra episodes, you could do so there. And just the usual. Follow me on Twitter at Dim Filipovic, Blue Sky as well. And this was awesome. I love chopping it up with you guys. So anytime you want to have me back on, even if this Jets season keeps going off the rails, I'm always happy to come chat and just talk about whatever you guys are interested in.
Absolutely. Well, we love having you on, and I know I'm speaking for Lyss and myself when I say the Hockey PDOcast is our favorite hockey podcast. So keep up the great work. We really, really appreciate you taking the time, and enjoy the rest of the season. Hopefully the Jets can turn around. We can have you back under some better circumstances.
I'm looking forward to it. Keep up the great work, guys.
Thanks, Dimitri. So there he is, Dmitri Filipovich from the Hockey PDOcast. Awesome, awesome, awesome guest. One of our faves here on WST Sunday Live. And like I said at the end of that interview, before we teed up the interview, Hockey PDOcast, a great listen always if you want to get a pulse on the rest of the National Hockey League. And at the end there, Lyss, we asked him, does Mark Scheifele make Team Canada? Or what is he on the bubble? I asked the chat, and 66% of people say yes. I honestly thought, we're asking a Winnipeg audience, that number would be a little bit higher. But hey, he's on pace for 100.
Higher. Holy Dinah. Okay.
Well, we're at, you got to understand the audience we're asking this question to as well. He's on pace for 42 goals, 106 points. He's had a great start to the season. Where are you at? Where's your Scheifele Team Canada pulse?
I go back and forth every day, and I think I might have one of the least popular opinions in this entire what is the word I'm looking for? Where we are right now, our local everything in Winnipeg. But I think that I wouldn't put him on my team, but I think that there's a higher likelihood that Team Canada does, just because I think that he checks the box of he's, a little bit older, proven playoff performer, all these different things. Like, I think Team Canada likes the player, but I don't know. I think that every player, and I talked about this in the interview with them, where I think that we're galaxy braiding things a little bit too much, where I was kind of in the camp for a bit of the take the 12 best players available. But when you have such an elite group of forwards at your disposal, the drop off between player number 10 to 11 is so insignificant, the same way that the drop off to player number 14 to 15 is so insignificant. So I think that there's validity in wanting to showcase different roles and bring together different roles. And there are just some other guys who I think have differentiating factors that are maybe a little bit, quote unquote, lower than him in this ranking of the best forwards on Team Canada. So I think that's a pretty unpopular take in this market. Maybe that's the word I was looking for. Where we're sitting right now, I think he makes it. He makes it, but maybe we'll put together some content in a couple weeks. Maybe we already have a Google Calendar invite about what we're going to do with our Team Canada projections and kind of dive into those opinions a little bit further.
Yeah. And I think it's going to come down to role, whether or not Mark Scheifele will make it. If they want like a top 9 versatile scoring option, he's there. If they want to run a checking heavy style penalty kill type bottom 6, I don't think he'll be there. So it all comes down to what Team Canada wants, and the emergence of guys like Celebrini and Bedard have definitely made it tougher on Scheifele for sure. But again, he's having a great season, so he's right on the bubble, and he's got about a month left. A couple of weeks left, and there's a break in there too. So not many games for Mark Scheifele to do anything more than he's already done, which is pretty good so far, what he's done so far this season. But let's get to our first of 2 segments. First of 3, we already got to our Chud's Power Sports Power Poll, but our first of the 2 remaining. And this one's trending up down. This is the part of the show where we pick one Winnipeg Jet who's trending up or down over the past week of play. We usually stray away from the players we took last week in hopes of not repeating ourselves for trending up and down. But who's one Winnipeg Jet list? Tough start to the week for the Jets. Great end to the week last night, as we talked about off the top of the show. Who do you have for trending up?
Yeah, I'm looking at our list because, we don't pick guys that we've chosen in the previous week, but I'm looking at who's kind of been in our trending down segment a little bit lately. And a couple weeks ago, I don't remember if it was me or you. It was probably me. I chose Alex Iafallo as a trending down pick, so I'm going to give him my trending up pick. Nice. I think that, a couple reps with the top line seemed to light his fire a little bit, and he was really, really good with Adam Lowry yesterday in the matchup role. And, being in a matchup role and still being able to generate some offense is always impressive. I went on my monologue about that earlier in the show, so I think it kind of falls in line with that. I will give my trending up pick this week to Alex Iafallo.
Nice. I like that pick. And some people dropping their picks in the chat down below. Throw your picks down below. I'm going to take Connor Hellebuyck. He's back, and this team, I joked earlier that he's back and, he fixed the power play and he fixed the secondary scoring and he fixed the defensive structure and all of these things. But the calming presence that he has in the net, I'm just going to take him, and having him back, he's the MVP. And Scott O'Neill said it, a few days ago. If you add in Connor McDavid to the Edmonton Oilers again, and you add in McKinnon to the Avs again, or McCarr to the Avs again, the impact that these guys have on their teams is huge, and he's the reigning Hart Trophy winner, and he's going to be good for a number of wins going forward, and he's ready to go. Lyss, last night, he was asked, by our good friend of the show, Murat Atesh from The Athletic, if there's any lingering pain in his knee that he'll have to monitor going forward. Here's what he said, quote, "No, I'm back. I'm back, baby. Let's play." I think Jets fans are ready for Connor Hellebuyck to play. He's had 3 weeks off. The workload is a question mark, of course, but going forward, he's going to play. He's going to be awesome. Connor Hellebuyck gets my trending up pick for coming back into the lineup and looking good in his first game back. Would have been nice to get a shutout. Was broken nicely by Jacob Chikrin at the end there. But who do you have for trending down list? Who's your pick?
Weird pick. I'm going to pick Hayden Fleury. Yesterday, Scott O'Neill mentioned that this is the first game all year where the team has been entirely healthy, and Hayden Fleury is still on the injured reserve at this time, I believe. And so that, to me, signifies that, Logan Stanley has really solidified his spot as the third pairing left-handed defenseman for this team. And if not him, then maybe something else, maybe some offense, whatever. I think Hayden Fleury's role on this team is kind of diminishing by the day as Logan Stanley continues to impress in certain ways. I think, take it or leave it, but, take some reps with some of the bigger guys on the team. He take some shifts with DeMello, with Pionk. He's taken some shifts with Morrissey even. I think that Hayden Fleury's, ability to be regular in this lineup, I think, is dwindling by the day. So that's maybe a lazy pick, but I'll choose him.
I like it. And not for his play, of course, because he's been injured, but just the situation around him. I like that. I'm just trying to bring up our picks from last week list so that I don't repeat. Yes, this player was taken last week. I was going to take Cole Perfetti again, but he was taken.
Come on, man.
Like, what? What has he done?
I know.
Anyways,
I know.
I'm going to take... This might be an unpopular pick. I guess I'm going both goalies here. I'm going to go Eric Comrie. This was an opportunity with Connor Hellebuyck out for 2 to 3 weeks for him to step up and earn himself some money in the offseason, like big time. And not like, he's not going to get paid like the Connor Hellebuyck contract, but, Laurent Brossoit had a couple great seasons with the Winnipeg Jets and then went on and got a $3 million for 2 years deal with the Chicago Blackhawks. And Eric Comrie, if he came out in these past 3 weeks and had like a 9-10 save percentage and kept the Jets afloat and all of these things, he would have earned himself a lot more money, whether it was in a backup role with the Jets somewhere else next season. But look, I'm going to take him for trending down just because the Jets went 2-1-8 in his absence, and his save percentage was not pretty. Again, we weren't expecting him to be Connor Hellebuyck, and there were defensive breakdowns in the games as well. I'm not disputing that. I'm not pinning this all on Eric Comrie. I just think bigger picture, this was a big opportunity for him, and he didn't take the advantage of it the way that he could have. So I'm going to take Eric Comrie for trending down, and I think, obviously, his number of starts is going to diminish greatly over these next however many months are left in the season. That's going to do it for trending up, down. Leave your picks in the chat down below, and while you're down there, hit the like button. We'd really appreciate it. Lets YouTube know that we're putting out some great content here at Winnipeg Sports Talk. And Lyss, we have one more segment before we close today's show. This is one burning question. This is the part of the show where we throw it to the chat for questions about the Winnipeg Jets. So drop your questions in the chat down below, and we will try and rapid fire through as many as we can before we wrap today's show. But Lyss, I have a burning question for you. What was your reaction to the Quinn Hughes trade?
Yay, because I love when players get traded.
Yay?
I love trades. I'm a big
Minnesota?
trade fan. But then, my first reaction was, this is so interesting. And then my second reaction was, how many of the best defensemen in the entire National Hockey League play for teams in the Central Division? That was one of the first questions I kind of asked myself, because immediately I go, oh my gosh, Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes in the same division. That's insane. And then I started thinking about Josh Morrissey and Miro Heiskanen and Roman Josi when he's healthy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like how many of the 1As in the league are in this freaking division right now? That's it's pretty crazy. They're pretty big game breakers. Obviously, you got guys like Adam Fox and Rasmus Dahlin, and there are other great defensemen in the league. But in terms of the gold standard guys we talk about, a lot of them are hanging out in the middle of the continent right now.
Yes, that is for sure. What did you think of the return?
Yeah, I
for
mean, I
Vancouver?
think it's hard because I think that it's not a galaxy brain take by any means, but it always must be addressed. You were never going to quote unquote win this trade unless it was like a crazy anomaly circumstance. The fact that they even got to this point should feel like a failure for the organization, and I think it does for the fan base. I think it does for a lot of people. Quinn Hughes is a top X defenseman in the league, and maybe I'll give you that as my burning question to you, because I think the number is pretty low in terms of how many players, or pardon me, defensemen are better than him. Hell, we can go players too if you want, because he's pretty exceptional. I like where Vancouver's head is at in terms of trying to extract some of the good, promising assets out of Minnesota. I think that, the first I'm kind of questionable about, just because Minnesota, now that they have Quinn Hughes, the first is not going to be an impressive, it's not a lottery pick or anything like that. Zeev Boyum, I think, has a lot of the tools that could turn him into a top pairing offensive defenseman, which they are now missing. So I like that he was included in that. And if I had to draw up a trade package from Minnesota to Vancouver, if I had known that this was going to come, I think that it probably would have looked similar to this. Marco Rossi is a really good player who's been in a lot of trade talks for a while, so it kind of just makes sense to throw him in there. And throw him in there. It's a valuable player, whatever. But I think Zeev Boyum is a good addition there as well. I don't like it by any means for Vancouver, just because I think it continues to put them into no man's land, and because they didn't go all in on the 8 first round draft picks to try and restock and rebuild or anything like that. They tried to take a slight win now approach with it, so they got younger with it, but I don't know if the pieces are good enough. And at the end of the day, Quinn Hughes is one of the best players in the National Hockey League. I can put him into a similar camp as if you were to trade Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, whatever. Josh Morrissey. Sure,
would people be happy with this return if Josh Morrissey got traded for that?
God, no.
Exactly.
God, no.
I can't get over
exactly
this.
it, yeah.
This is my thing. Quinn Hughes, you asked me he's a top what defenseman in the NHL? It's 2 or 3 easily, right? And sure, they got back Marco Rossi, who the Minnesota Wild made it very public last year that they, didn't like how that contract negotiation was going. They've got Zeev Boyum, which the Family Guy scene just keeps replaying in my head. It's you could have a boat or you could have a mystery box, and the mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat. Zeev Boyum could be anything. He could even be Quinn Hughes, Lyss. He could be, but you might as well just take Quinn Hughes. And it's I know he's not re-signing, so this is the way that they had to go and they had to do it. But I just think
no, and this is why prospects will always be more valuable to me as trade assets than picks. Picks are nothing. I understand that they're used to fill in the gaps of trades and everything to try and create equilibrium, but it's that could be nothing. Proven assets are important in certain regards, and so I totally agree with your assessment on that. And again, I think the other thing is just I feel like we seem to be underrating how good Quinn Hughes is. Quinn Hughes kind of is Josh Morrissey in that regard, where it's he can carry the team on his back in moments, all these different things, and also goes out there to defend a 1-goal lead against the Connor McDavids of the world and everything like that. He's everything. He's a total package. And I think that it sucks that they couldn't retain him. And I also think it sucks when Canadian markets can't retain their star players. It personally hurts me a little bit, but also I have personal beef with all of the Canadian markets because I hate their teams. So I'm haha, Vancouver stinks. But
I like Vancouver.
Okay.
What? Out of the Canadian teams, they're
out of the Canadian teams. Them and the Sens. I think I'm a little bit less.
I got a soft spot for those teams for sure.
All right.
And this brings them into a rebuild, but you're just not. And my take on the situation is okay, the Minnesota Wild have Quinn Hughes for the next year and a half, and that's 2 playoff runs. If he walks in free agency, then we might look at this trade a little bit differently. If they sign him to a long-term extension, they blow the doors off this deal. But
if he walks in free agency, I guess it's a bit of a moot point. If they win a cup this year and he ends up walking in free agency after next year, who cares?
Yeah.
But if they win a cup, he won't walk. He'll stay, right? So I don't know.
If he wins a cup,
maybe
then
not.
Maybe screw it, I'll go play with my brothers. Do you think he's going to New Jersey? No matter what? That's just happening?
No, I
No?
don't really fall into that camp that it's like inevitable, whatever. Like,
Okay, yeah.
I'm interested to see how this plays out.
Me too.
But yeah, I think that one's a little bit like obviously everyone wants that. Like the New Jersey wants that and whatever. I think this is a crazy comparison I'm gonna draw, but like I almost put it into the bucket of like the Jonathan Toews return to Winnipeg story, where it's like you can't miss the forest for the trees for a good storyline. And like if it doesn't make sense for the player, if it doesn't make sense for the team, like just be careful with this kind of thing. And so I think that everyone's trying to like, work around it with kind of kid gloves a bit to be like, it will do it if it makes sense for kind of everyone and stuff. So I think it's a possibility. And I think at one point in their careers, they will all play together. But I don't know if it's going to be in a year and a half when his current contract is expiring.
Okay. Interesting. Let's get to some of these questions. Can the Jets keep it going? For me, this question comes from T. Will. For me, this game, we're either going to look back at the Christmas break as, okay, that was the turning point, or we're going to look back and say that was just a one-game mirage. And they put it together for one game and then went back to not being able to score goals outside of the top line, yada, yada, yada. But they can absolutely keep it going, in my opinion. And we might look back at this game and be like, wow, that was really the moment where they put it all together. Or we might not. That's the beauty of it, right? Tyson asks, who's the Minnesota Wild number 1 center? It's Joel Eriksson Ek. I think it's a bigger question who their number 2 center is right now. I wouldn't be shocked if they make a move at the deadline for a 2C. Waiters, will Connor and Lyss take a plethora of selfies with us on Wednesday? Wednesday, Boston Pizza, Kenniston, Jets Blues watch party. Super excited to see everyone there. And you know what? If people show up and they want a plethora of selfies, they'll get a plethora of selfies. I can confirm that right here on WST Sunday Live. Super looking forward to that. It's going to be so much fun doing that on Wednesday. T-Will ask, can the Jets beat the Wild? Can the Wild manage to sign Quinn Hughes again? Can the AHL do fewer Sunday matinee games? Comment. It's a good question.
Never. That's their hallmark.
Never.
Here's Kenny's Moose game day.
Yeah, Moose game day. Kenny's Waterball. Jets have 7 games left before the new year. They are 4 points back of a wildcard spot with 2 games in hand of the teams ahead. So with Hellebuyck back, will the Jets be in a wildcard spot before year's end? Lyss, where are you at on that?
It's a great question. I'm glad that KWB spelled it out for us like this. I'm going to say, you know what? Let's go with yes. I think that there's potential for the next couple of games. They have a game against the Sens coming up on Monday tomorrow. That's, they've been okay this year. They play against the Blues. They have a couple of tough opponents. A Minnesota Wild game here in Winnipeg on a Saturday night in a couple weeks. That's going to be absolute cinema. I think there's potential for that. I'm going to go, though, with they're going to be one spot out of a wild card spot. So I think they're going to cover some ground and they're going to make some ground. And I think that in the aggregate, they will kind of end up with a net positive rating and climbing up the standings. And but I just think that in order for that to happen, lots of good hockey teams that are playing good hockey right now have to lose a lot of games. And I'm counting on that a little bit less. I think that it would almost be too perfect of a storm for the Jets to fully be in a wild card spot after 7 more games. But I don't know. Where do you fall?
I'll say yes. I think they'll be, right around it for sure. But yeah, Connor Hellebuyck coming back raises the floor of this team by a lot. As we saw on Saturday night, I think it also raises the ceiling of this team. This team is just all around better with the MVP in net, duh. But their schedule, the next couple of weeks as well, they get the Ottawa Senators, who have been up and down, struggling more as of late. Especially recently. They just lost to the Minnesota Wild the other day, but they get the Ottawa Senators on Monday, St. Louis Blues on Wednesday. Then they travel to take on the Colorado Avalanche on Friday. And then to their last game before the Christmas break is on the road against the Utah Mammoth. Then they get the Wild coming out of the break, Quinn Hughes. They get the Oilers. They get the Red Wings. All playoff teams. I think the Red Wings are still in the playoffs. I haven't looked at the East in a while, but the Oilers are rolling again. The Wild just got Quinn Hughes. The Avs have lost 2 games in regulation, and it's December 14th. But there are some easier teams on that too. Utah doesn't have Logan Cooley. St. Louis hasn't been great this year. Ottawa's struggling as of late. So I'll say yes. I'll say they win the games they're supposed to over this next little stretch, and then maybe they sneak in a win there. Probably not against Colorado, but maybe, Edmonton right before the break or something like that. They beat one of these other teams that are really rolling right now. So I'll say yes, barely. Yes, barely. And look,
Sure.
The New Year is a good little point to pause on the Winnipeg Jets season, because if they're still 11 points back of the Minnesota Wild like they are today, they're kind of locked into a wild card spot almost at that point, unless Minnesota really slides, and they just got a top 3 defenseman in the sport. So I'm not expecting them to really slide. Dallas and Colorado, I think, are unattainable from a Winnipeg Jets perspective this season. So you're really fighting for that 3 seed in the Central, and we'll see if the Winnipeg Jets can make it a fight. But I mean, to me, if this team's a playoff team, I think they're destined for a wild card spot kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we could definitely look at the next 7 games like a miniature series, right? Because, we spoke about, it's crazy how the pendulum can swing so much with just one game, and, how down and out everyone was on this team. And I think there's still a ton of validity to what the concerns were to start the month of December and over the course of the 3 weeks that Connor Hellebuyck was out and everything like that. I think kind of treating the next 7 games as a bit of a miniature series is important. If the Winnipeg Jets can't follow up Saturday's game with a decent performance on Monday, that's a problem. So I think that if this is the spark that it took and whatever to get them rolling again, that's great. I really, really, though, need to see how they play the next couple of weeks. The schedule is tight again. I know they're kind of at its mercy, but it is what it is. They get a little bit of a holiday break and then some bang, 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 a bunch of games to kind of close out the end of the year. There's a lot kind of on the line in terms of the next little stretch here. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on it, because I don't keep a close eye on anything else that's related. I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I will be watching. Follow for more. I will be watching Jets hockey for the next couple weeks.
We will be watching the Winnipeg Jets. That we can confirm as well. And you should do it Wednesday night, Keniston, Boston Pizza, Winnipeg Jets, St. Louis Blues. Will be a super fun time. Hope to see everyone there. That's going to do it for our One Burning Question segment. Thank you, everyone, for throwing your questions down in the chat below. That's going to do it for us on WST Sunday Live. Unless, Liz, you want to quickly touch on the Jari deal, because, I mean, there's not much to be said here.
We thought about this yesterday.
I think Tristan Jari will be better for the Edmonton Oilers than Stuart Skinner was. And I'm also in the camp that they needed to just do something with their goaltending. I also don't think it's a coincidence that Connor McDavid looked like he was shot out of a cannon last night against the Toronto Maple Leafs after making a goalie trade. Do you think the Oilers ran it by McDavid first? I think they did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
100%, right?
I think that if they want to, reupholster the seats in the rink, they're going to run it past McDavid.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that the deal is kind of... lots of people have had some pretty strong opinions on it. This is definitely one of those that, depending on who's in the room talking to me right now, if you're like, this is a terrible deal, I'll fight you on it. If you're like, this is an awesome deal, I'm going to fight you on it too, because I think at the end of the day, my opinion on it is pretty neutral. But I was saying to Connor yesterday, and I'll say it to you all now, I compared a little bit to when we were talking about Eric Comrie at the beginning of the playoffs last year, where Connor Hellebuyck was clearly struggling kind of in the early couple games in St. Louis in particular. And the question was, should Eric Comrie start next game? And I was of the mind that, in the micro scale, you know what, maybe you would actually have a better chance of winning that one hockey game with Eric Comrie than with Connor Hellebuyck. I subscribe to that line of thinking a little bit. But when you're in the playoffs, the goal is a Stanley Cup. There's no difference between losing 1 or 2 extra games, whatever, if you don't win the Stanley Cup. And you weren't going to win a Stanley Cup with Eric Comrie, so it didn't really matter to me. I was like, you don't start him. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And this is become pretty evident that this group doesn't think they can win with Stuart Skinner. So you have to do something. So that's kind of the camp that I fell into, is that a move needed to be made on the goaltending side. For sure. If nothing, then to kind of change the mentality of the group, and say what you want about the mentality. If you need to scapegoat a guy, or the team needs to be better, whatever. If they're trying to win a Stanley Cup before McDavid walks to the open market, if they don't, you got to do something. And there weren't a lot of goaltenders available, and there's not a lot that you can necessarily fit within their cap constraints. So I understand why they're doing it, but the part that I like the most is the asset management side from Kyle Dubas for the Penguins. I think it's great. But yeah, don't know how much it moves the needle for the team, if at all, because I think there are a lot of similarities between these two goaltenders.
Yeah, I think there's, as goalies, they're both very up and down. They both have had good stretches before, had really bad stretches before. Jari was on waivers, as everyone has mentioned for sure. But I do think that he's going to be the guy there. He's under contract for this year and the next 2 years at a pretty high cap hit, Tristan Jari is. But I don't know. I'm just in the camp of like they needed to do something because the Stuart Skinner thing was just getting I'm not even in the market and it was getting tiring. I can't even imagine what our friends at Edmonton Sports Talk we're going through daily talking about like, man, Stuart Skinner, the discourse, is he good? He's not good enough to win a cup with, yada, yada, yada. I don't know. I think they needed to do something. Yeah. This is a move. Did they trade for Stuart Skinner East? Maybe, but it might turn out better. It might.
The one hater thing I will say is that I know that he's had an okay start to the season, whatever, but this is a move for the sake of making a move, not a move for the sake of acquiring Tristan Jari, because Tristan Jari has been widely known to be available for the last couple of years.
Sure.
And he was literally put on waivers. And I understand that, things looked a bit different for the team at the time, but if this was their guy, like I'm trying to think of who the player is that the Winnipeg Jets talked about they tried to trade for like 3 times. I think it was like Cam Schilling or something really silly like that. But like if there's your guy, if he becomes available, you're always knocking on the door. This was not the Edmonton Oilers guy. This was the best goaltender that was possibly available that they could make a trade package for, whose GM was picking up the phone. So I think that if you think that it's like, man, the Oilers wanted Tristan Jari and they got him. No, the Oilers wanted to get rid of Stuart Skinner, and that's what they did. And I feel bad for the local guy. And, he was never primed to be a starting NHL goaltender, but then he showed promising flashes and a whole narrative was created. I would never want to play in that market. That sounds awful if you're a goalie. Man, oh man, I can't even imagine what Stu's been going through the last couple weeks. But I hope that he gets to go to a team that is kind of held together by the power of friendship right now and maybe enjoy himself over there.
Yeah, exactly. And good to see Jari get his first win last night as well. And look, he's, people are saying chat, Pens fans are glad Jari's gone, inconsistent, injury prone. Like I see both sides of this in terms of like the answer was always, and I don't think this would really happen in terms of the cap. This wouldn't have worked. But the answer to me always was having Jari and Skinner and just riding the hot hand because they're both the same goalie where they have these up and down swings and either guy can get really hot at the right time kind of thing. You just kind of go with whoever's hot at whatever time, but they're just making Jari the guy. And look, maybe they'll pull a Colorado Avalanche and just change both of their goalies. Maybe there's another move to come and they'll upgrade on Calvin Pickard and have Jari and someone else as their 1B, right? We'll see. We will see. But anyways, it's
Georgiev. Bring him back.
Georgiev. Where is he? He's not even in the league anymore. Yeah, he's in the K. Okay, yeah. Anyways, that's going to do it for us on an extended edition of WST Sunday Live. Thank you to all of you who stuck with us throughout today's show. Jets with a big 5-1 win last night. Are they back? Andrew Patterson and Michael Remus will have you covered tomorrow, 1 o'clock, WST Daily, with more on this Winnipeg Jets game. And Les, I know you threw the link in the chat. Let people know where they can find your newsletter moving forward here on Chell Chit Chat.
Yeah, if you want to hear more of our kind of theories and back and forth and all these different debates that we'll get into, I kind of accidentally, didn't even mean to, sort of tee it up there at the end where I said, hey, I could take either sides of this. That's what my new newsletter that's coming out in the new year is all about, is kind of identifying that there's not always a right answer to some of our favorite hockey conversations. So plugging in a bunch of information that kind of contradicts itself because hockey is such a goofy, random sport. So that's a monthly free newsletter. I dropped the link in the chat. So if you subbed, it would mean the world to me. So it's called No Right Answer and it's hosted on Beehive. So you can find it. It'll be hitting your inbox on the second Wednesday of every month. I don't remember what I said. I have them scheduled to go though. So it's going to be a blast. Thanks for letting me plug.
Of course, always. And thank you everyone for checking out today's show. Really appreciate it. Like I said, hit the notification bell down below so you get notified every time we go live, every time we post a video. Liz and I will have our Team Canada roster projection coming out in the next couple of weeks as well. And we'll see you all Wednesday, Kenniston BP, Winnipeg Jets, St. Louis Blues watch party. These watch parties have been an absolute blast the last number of years. So super excited to see all of you there. From Lyss Houde, I'm Connor Hrabchak. Thank you for watching another edition of WST Sunday Live. We'll talk to you next Sunday after the Winnipeg Jets play another week of hockey, this time with Connor Hellebuyck. We'll see if they can build off of Saturday night's performance tomorrow night on Prime against the Ottawa Senators. Take care, everyone, and we will talk to you next Sunday, 9 a.m. right here on WST Sunday Live.